make sure this is being saved.
Just for the homework.
Okay. Do you mean the activity with the joins, or do you mean the data model? Okay, this is working. Hello. Maybe, like, I was thinking one thing we could do today is just go in and do some of that activity.
Okay.
Right here. Yeah, how did that go?
Not great.
Okay. It's a bit much. I mean, I think, and I don't think, like, one thing I was frustrated about with finding stuff online is none of the examples make any sense. Like this is one of the best ones, and it was like soccer goals or something like that. But like they named the table, didn't they name the table like match or something, or game, but the ID foreign key was match ID. So it's like it's not even a very good database. Like it's just yeah, and there's anyway. All right, let's try to go through and do some of this. If you want to join, you could share. I can share my screen.
Okay.
And you can just watch along, or you can just, you can just look at it if you want.
On
it's on Zoom, so I posted the link in the channel. Yeah, I think let's start doing some of those join exercises, and this will be hopefully a little bit, make some sense. They're very confusing. They're very challenging, so I don't know. Yeah, I think again, like it's important to say like a lot of this stuff is not necessarily, you're not going to be expected to do this stuff right off first day at a job,
That's comforting.
Yeah.
We're not going to work on SQL things.
Yeah. I mean, hey, if you want to get a job doing that, apply for one, then yes, you're going to have to do it. But there's plenty of where you don't. Okay, let me figure out this. Got to find my slides so I can find the link to the thing. Oh, thank you. All right, the join operation. So this is fun. Okay, so they have a diagram of these three tables, and let's see, goal has match ID, which refers to game. Very confusing. And the notation here is a very weird one. Like this means one to many. So this is just like the two bars on this side and the fork with the circle on this side. If you do full crow's foot, and what that means is that every single goal has a match ID and a team ID, and they cannot be empty. That's it. So there could be no goals in a particular game. There could be no goals for a particular team. It could be a very bad team. But that's all legitimate, and that's what it means when it says 0 or star, right? And that's the circle in the crow's foot notation. It means the same thing. But it's the most common pattern is 0 or meant to many, and exactly one, which means exactly one means there must be a value for team ID or match ID and team ID. It cannot be null or empty.
There have to be a goal in 0. There have to be some kind of number.
A goal. What do you mean a goal?
Like each game would have to have a number in the goal column, even if that number is 0.
A game doesn't have a goal column. Goal has a match or game column, So it's the reverse relationship, and there could be no rows that are goals that have that value. So yeah, so there's actually no goal. There's nothing is referencing to goal. Goal sort of has references out to other tables.
So
And
people can, like, I mean, from what I'm taking, it's like they can be have a, it's kind of like an empty, unused calendar that, like, I mean, that you're gonna use eventually, but you haven't used yet. Like,
yeah, there could be no rows in the goal table. You know, it could be an empty table, or there could only be rows that refer to other games or to other teams. And you could still have a game with no goals that are pointing to it, that actually refer to it.
Oh, then I'm confused.
Okay.
But so how does J come?
So it's because so it's great. They call it match ID, but the table is called game. It's very badly named, very, very badly designed database in general. It's not a good example.
I
But
don't understand the point. What it's like trying to accomplish.
well, so they're basically storing all of the goals that were scored in in some World Cup or some tournament in Poland, right? So they have games, and it's a table of games. And this is like a sample of what the game table looks like. So one row will be game number 1001. And this has a team 1 and a team 2. These refer to team entries, right?
Oh.
So these are there's going to be team 1. See, that's why there's 2 lines here, is because each game has, home and away, or team 1 and team 2. So it's twice it refers to this team table, to 1 and exactly 1. And
So the goal is like a scorekeeper.
no, a goal is somebody scored. Somebody scored a point.
So they record it in the goal.
Right. So this here is like the goal table. And see how this goal doesn't have its own ID. See how PK and PK here, it's saying that the unique thing in goal is the combined match ID and the time in the match. Because this is how they do it in football sometimes. It's like goal in the 55th minute or something, right? Or soccer, whatever you call it. This is football or American soccer. Yes. Anyway, so does that make, like, the goal does not have its own ID?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah,
Goal has uniquely, a goal is identified by 2 columns, match and time. And that's why both of these have PK here, which is a primary key. And that I think that was in one of the readings about. So game, it does have an ID, and that says PK here. And team has its own ID, and that's the primary key. So each of these PK is unique. And in this case, both of these together are unique. But match ID, look, it's also a foreign key, which is going to match the ID of it's going to be the same as the ID of a game, even though it's called match ID. Very, very silly. So let's first thing, before we even get into this, let's draw this diagram better and with good names, like that might be a good. So, has anyone used this Draw.io? Kate sent me one. She was using this to draw the diagram. It's draw.io. And then the first time you go there, you might have to choose where you want to save your drawings. You can make an account and everything. I think it's free, but you can also pick device in the first prompt to save it on your computer. So, and I'll save this so that you can load it into the website, and I'll put it in the Slack so you can download this diagram I'm doing right now. But yeah, so let's make some tables. This one will be what do we call it? Game or match? Let's stick to one, maybe. Okay, game. And this, let's put out all, let's list out all the columns in these when we're doing that, because why not? This is one way you can add more detail to it. And sometimes, like, you don't necessarily need to start this way right off the bat, because it's often like, you kind of know in general what something like, let's say you're doing, let's say you're doing like class, like in a school sort of system database, right? You want to say like, this is one class offering. You don't necessarily always need to right away list out, the name, the subject, this, that, because you kind of have an implicit understanding that all of those are going to be. So, that's why, we're like, start with the actual things and the relationships between them, and then sort of build from there. But because we already have this sort of listed out here, and, we're trying to sort of get a very solid, sort of comprehensive understanding of this, let's just list out all the fields. So, I'm all over the place. This browser, Safari, okay. Okay, so game has its own ID. There's a lot of ways to notate this. Sometimes it's like a star when it's required, or a key, but let's use the same thing. Say PK is ID, which means primary key. It has a date, it has a stadium, and it has two teams. Date, stadium, team one. So I'm going to actually rename this to say, we'll call this one game ID, because that makes it easier. It'll make it a little more. We'll call this one team one ID, and this one is team two ID, because these are just they are values that refer to other fields. So we'll call this one. We'll say this one is an FK, which is foreign key. And that's just what you call the field which has the constraint on it. Remember, we did foreign key constraints. This is going to have to match one of the IDs in the other table.
So that's like
It's the team's ID. So it's just the unique number of, or identifier of the team. In this case, the team IDs. In this case, the team IDs are 3 letters, all capitals, like this. So the ID is actually a string that's 3 characters long, but they're abbreviations for the countries. And that's like probably because then you can just look at the data and you're not looking at numbers and having to match numbers. You can see right away from this one table that this was Greece against Czechoslovakia, right? So, yeah, okay, let's, this will be, I don't know, let's try to like make this somewhat legible. Okay, that's pretty good, I guess. And then, we can make it left align maybe. And we could order all of the special, keys all together so they sort of line up. Come on. It's not, this editor is not the perfect. It's not perfect. It's a little glitchy and tricky. Okay. So this stadium is not a foreign key to anything. There's no stadiums table in this model, right? You could add another table that's like information about each venue. And then this could be a foreign key to that rather than what it is right now, which appears to be in this data set. Stadium is just a string with the name of the stadium, national stadium, whatever. So this could be stadium ID, and it could refer somewhere else if you wanted more information, size of the stadium, whatever. And as soon as you start using this for real and like building it out, you would definitely want a stadium table, even if it was just named at the time, because this table, the idea of the database is not just so that people can look at this table and read it. That's a convenient way to use these country abbreviations, but that's not, that's sort of almost secondary to like the data being correct and not duplicating or having a whole lot of extra copies of things that you have to then, maintain. One problem here, of course, is like, Czechoslovakia is now called the Czech Republic, right? So what if they could change their abbreviation to say we are CZR now, and then you'd have to go and find everywhere where it's this and change it. So that's an obvious issue with having the actual abbreviations for anything other than an ID. That's just a pure number that means nothing. Okay, so we have game, we'll do team. I'm just going to copy and paste and edit this. Team will have an ID. Sorry, PK team ID, and it will have what, a name. And I'm not sure what else. A coach, a team name, and a coach. Got it.
So, since do you need like
yeah, there would be many players per team. And I'm not sure how it works with this kind of tournament, but there could be players who play on different teams in different tournaments, right? So you could even end up having players on many teams, so many players and many teams. But definitely it's not going to fit in team tape. Like you could have like list of players is one of the fields, and it would just be a big long list. But if you really wanted to use this long term again, you're going to get a lot of benefit out of having moving and what's called normalizing the players out into their own table, which is then linked. That's the whole idea of these databases, is you end up with like sort of one flat version of every concept, and the concepts are linked together rather than having players nested in teams. Now we're going to talk next week about like document databases, and the point of those is kind of doing that, is kind of actually being able to say, here's everything you need to know about a team in this case. And there's reasons why you'd want to do that, just largely convenience and performance. If you always want to be looking at a team and all of its information, then yes, you put all of the players as like as part of the team object, But in general, like for general purpose, you often will end up, finding that you need to do something with play. You need to find certain players, and then you're stuck looking at teams and then into the teams for the players, or you want to do something where players are on more than one team, or there ends up being duplicates. There ends up being some awkward ways to navigate the data, and in general, like while this might not be the most performance, the quickest way to get a particular view of the data, it's much more general purpose. So that's why you would do that. So, players would probably, in this kind of model, you'd put them in their own table, almost definitely. Okay, so we have game, we have team, and we have goal, right? So goal has a primary key. Why don't we add a primary key this time of goal ID, even though, we don't need, you could make it a combination, like we said, of game and time. But let's just make a goal ID, because in general, unless you really, really have a good sense of why you're not going to add the ID, you always should add the ID. And I don't have a good sense of why we really don't need the goal ID. So I say, let's just add the goal ID. Okay, but goal also is a foreign key to game ID, or its game table. And we're going to actually call it game ID this time, not match ID. And goal also has a foreign key to team ID, right? So team ID. Oh, and they have a player. Yeah, so player would probably be a foreign key to player ID. So maybe let's just keep these three tables for right now, and then do some exercises, and then maybe we can try adding a player's table to this model, and maybe even a stadium model to this. Yeah. Okay, so there's player, so there's goal ID, game ID, team ID, player, and then time. Okay, so those are all of the values, and then we've already defined all the foreign keys. So really you can just say, okay, this one has a foreign key to game ID. So that means there has to be a line between them, right? And because this side has the foreign key, the side with the foreign key is the many side, when there's a many to one. So because this side has the key, lots of goals can all have the same game ID. So there will be many goals, and there will be one. So let's do this with the full-on crow's foot, empty, circle, plus, nope, that's the wrong end. The many side is the goal side. The crow's foot with the circle, and then this one will have the two bars. And we'll make both of those bigger. Okay, so that's goal. Every game has many goals. It doesn't have to have any goals. It could have no goals. But every goal must have a non-empty game ID. So there's the two bars. Let's do another arrow thing to connect here. Make it like a square. And this here has the same kind of thing. So empty thing with the circle thing, and then the two bars. And both of them should be bigger. Okay, so same idea. The foreign key goes to team, so there's many of them. Doesn't have to be any of them, but each one must have a team. And then there's the team 1 and team 2, which go to team. So we're going to have some lines in between these two. And we have, okay, which side? So this is the start side, and this is the many side because it has the foreign. And there's two of them, right? Because there's two team IDs. So it's going to be really the same exact thing. There must be both of them. And there could be no games where either one or other team played. Like, in theory, one team could have just not played or whatever. So this is basically the complete model of the three tables with some changes. We've made this actually say game ID. We've added a unique, just pure ID field to the goal team or the goal table, and then use this crow's foot notation. So this is probably more familiar than the other diagram, and a little nicer model. It's slightly different. So again, we don't, here we don't actually have a unique goal ID column, and we have match ID instead of game ID, which is silly. All right, anyway, so does that all really sound like it makes sense to you?
Yeah, that was really helpful.
Okay.
Just doing like that walkthrough. This is why this table is here. This is how it's connected. This is that.
Cool.
We put these things here.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I mean, very good.
I was thinking, like, I mean, people make yourself see goals, it's like, oh, this is my goal. You know what I'm saying? Okay, but it's like this
Goal is a score. Yeah.
Yeah. If they did scores, like,
Yeah.
it would make money.
Yeah. And if this actually matched this, if the match ID, game ID, anyway. Okay, well, good. And I think, it's good to have a second example that's not the Messages app, just to see, because it's a little more complicated. And, you can see how you apply the same principles to it. And we'll extend this in a bit, but let's do some of these joins now. This is going to be fun. Okay, so here it's saying modify this thing to show the match ID and the player name for all goals scored by Germany. To identify German players, check for team ID equals GR. Okay, did anyone get this? So we need to find the match ID and the player name. So if we submit this right away, we get 4 columns, and it says wrong answer, too many columns. Player like Ben. So like is a way to say only match the end of the string. So this would match anybody it starts with anything. %sign is like wild card, anything up to this point, and then the rest of it has to match. So it's instead of doing equals. If you did equal Bender, it's not going to work. If you did equal Lars Bender, then you get the same result. So it's just sort of a way to partially, filter on part of the string value. But that's not what we are trying to do. We're trying to get match ID and player. So because we're showing them, we better be selecting them. Match ID player. And we want to know not where the player is this, but where the team ID is GR. So I'm just going to copy this, paste it right here. I think that might be it. Hooray. Okay. Semicolon. Still works. Nice. Okay, so any questions about that one? We're just looking at the goal table. There's no joining or anything in this first one.
So let's select
This is join here. Oops. This is the join operation exercise. Kelly posted it in the student channel. Yeah. Oh, cool. There's more exercises. They're probably similarly silly and bad database design, but whatever. Okay, so I'll paste these answers in the channel. Actually, I'll say this is answer 1. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Exercise 9, and you did not get to exercise 10.
Yeah, I haven't done it.
Okay. But you got them all.
With help.
Okay. Cool. I think I'll go through them.
Yeah, you should still absolutely go.
Okay. Okay, so it says Lars Bender scored a goal in game 10-12. So that's because it's right here. Now we want to know which teams we're playing. So in that column, match ID in the goal table corresponds to the ID column in the game table. It's just terrible. So we can look up information about the game 10-12 by finding that same row in the game table. So show ID, stadium, team 1, team 2 for just game 10-12. So this is where game ID or ID equals 10, 12. That's all we need. Okay. You can combine the two steps into a single query with a join. And it says from clause says to merge data with that from the game table. So that's because we're saying from game join goal. Now, when you do just join with no inner, left, outer, whatever, I think it's inner. We can test this, but I believe just join is like shorthand for saying inner join. But I would always, pretty much always type inner join just because I'm not actually sure about it because I always type the actual kind of join. Okay. So select player and stadium from the game table, join with the goal table. And we're gonna join together each row based on when the ID of one table matches the match ID. I don't like this syntax when we're using joins to leave out the table name. This only works when the columns aren't gonna have the same, if the columns are the same in both tables, it's just gonna stop working. So I really don't like this convention of doing this. So let's add to here, player is in goal and what's the other one? Player and stadium. So player is in the goal table, and stadium is in the game match table. So let's do goal.player game.stadium because this makes it much more explicit. And similarly, let's do game.id equals goal.match ID, which is very silly. Okay, so good thing this actually still works. It's not canned, I think this is a real SQL server running these tests. Okay, so too few columns. We want to show the player, the team ID, the stadium, and the date for every German goal. Okay, so player is already there. Team ID is what is the team ID? There's the stadium, and the date is, let's get the date at least. Date is on the game table, and date. Okay, so we have 3 columns now, but we need the team ID. So for every German goal, isn't every German goal's team ID going to be Germany? Why would it ever be anything else? But let's see. I mean, this is goal.team ID, right? And we're not filtering this yet, which is what they want us to do. So I think the last step here, we've got 4 columns: goal player, goal team ID, game stadium, game date. And we're joining them together on game ID equals goal match ID. Let's add inner here just because I like that. And I don't always put parentheses here, but I guess it doesn't matter. You can. That's pretty cool. We'll leave them. But let's put a where goal.teamID equals GER. See how that goes. Hooray. That's all they wanted. So every team ID is GER. I don't know why you'd select that if you already know what it's going to be, but that is the problem. Okay, says use the same join as the previous question and show team 1, team 2, and player for every goal scored by a player called Mario. And this is how you fetch any string that starts with Mario, and then this is anything else. And this is how you use that like keyword. So this is sort of a new, we didn't cover like, but it's just another way to test a string. Okay, so I'm going to copy this whole thing, and we want to show team 1, team 2, and player. So we'll say goal dot team 1, goal dot team 2, goal dot player. I guess that's all they want. And this, instead of where goal dot team ID is that, we're going to say, copy this right in, where goal dot player like Mario %. And again, the percent is wildcard, so this matches anything in the rest of the string. Okay. Unknown column goal dot team 1 in field list. So what is so does goal doesn't have team 1. They're in the game table. So what does that even mean? Team 1, team 2. Maybe they mean game team 1 and game team 2. And then players on the goal table. So that's where we, and again, we're still joining on the same thing for all of this because we're just joining across that key. You know, we know that the game ID is the goals match ID. And we got it right. Hooray. Okay. So then we add the team table. This gives details of every national team, including the coach. You can join goal to team using the phrase goal join team on this. So we can show player, team ID, coach, and goal time for all goals scored in the first 10 minutes. Okay. So this is going to be slight, yes. So this here works, right? So all three of these columns are on the goal table. And we only need to add this fourth, right? Because we already have all these three. We need to find the coach. So the first thing I want to do is just add goal dot in front of everything because it's less confusing. Right? You know, it's more typing, but you know, I think especially if you're, you know, just trying to do this without getting confused or breaking something, it's worth the extra typing, in my opinion. Okay, so this still works, but we need to add a coach right here. And we get coach by going here, join eTeam on eTeam.id equals goal.teamID. Okay, and then this is going to be eTeam.coach, right? Because we're getting it from there. So we go across, we grab extra columns from this this team table into our from. You know, we bring all those in and match them with the rows based on when this is true. And then we could select, now because we've done that, we're joining them, both of them, we can select columns from either table. And it's going to give us one row per result. So I mean, this is just all a join is you are, pulling in some other source, you're matching up rows with rows somehow. You have to tell it how. And then you get to select any columns from either of those sources or three sources. You can start, I don't know, do they start doing three-way joins? Okay. It works very much the same. You just do another inner join after. So you do inner join this on this, and then you can do inner join something else on something else. Yeah.
So what if you just want to join? You do. Wait, so it's when the way you wrote it is image mark 18 on 18 copy. So you just you have to do the image mark on 18 and then another on join.
Yeah, so you could do like, I won't save this as the answer, but you could say, select all of this from goal, inner join eTeam on that, and then also inner join, let's say, let's join game, right? Game on game.id equals goal.match ID. Right, and this will work, but it won't have any different data, right? It's just gonna, and the reason is maybe we're joining in all the columns from game that have that match, where the ID matches the foreign key there. We're pulling in all those columns, yes, but we're not selecting anything from the game table. So if we said game.stadium, we would be able to add the stadium that each of these goals was scored at just by adding one more join. Yeah. I'll add this example in just so we have it saved. I can call it like bonus modification. So that's how you join all three together. Okay, to join game with eTeam, you could either use game join this, blah, 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 or game join blah, blah, blah. Oh, either of the teams could be a team, right? So game has 2 foreign keys for each team. So you can join, either one of those. Oh yeah, and they say you must specify the table name. We're just doing that anyway because you don't think about it. Okay, list the dates of the matches and the name of the team in which Fernando Santos was the Team 1 coach. What? Okay. Only when he was the Team 1 coach, not the Team 2 coach. Fine. All right. So the date and the name. These are the two things. So we need to find game.date and eTeam.name, right? Okay. Game.date, eTeam.name. Now I'm doing this, I'm like writing this kind of back. Like when you write SQL forwards, if you just type it all forwards, you're thinking about it. But it's like you're writing it out in the backwards order in which the actual process of getting the data happens. Like I'm saying right at the first line, I'm saying I want what's the end result of this whole thing, right? And I'm just kind of imagining we're going to have to go find the source of each of these things. And I know the source. I put the table in front of each of them. But it is kind of a weird thing. That's one of the weird things that some people maybe find hard to describe about why SQL is strange and different. It's because this is kind of what I mean when I say it's declarative. You're not describing things that should happen. You're just describing like the end result of all of this, And that's the first. Yeah. Yeah, and it's gonna run. It's gonna do the from first. It's gonna be like, oh, I'll find you all this table. Oh, and I'll join the table together. Oh, and I'll filter the table and everything. And then the last thing that it's gonna do is to actually get the data and send it back to you. So that and then even beyond that, like you could select from something else that you selected. You can nest a select inside a select, and it's gonna do the inside one first and then the outside one. So it's very backwards way of thinking about it. But anyway, sorry, I won't try to confuse you. Like this stuff is like good to know. It's going to be good to know, but like this is not things that you have to memorize for the rest of the course. We're probably not going to touch this again. So, just leave if you want. Go home. Yeah, and I think it'll make stuff less mystifying. When you're using the tools that let you skip this, if they give you a weird error or something, it'll be less mystifying because you might have some sense of what it's telling you. Okay. So, all right. So the first thing we're doing is the end result. We're going to get the game date and the e-team name. And we need to know the ones in which Fernando Santos was the Team 1 coach. Okay, so we're going to need obviously, both of these tables as our sources of data. We're going to have to say from game inner join tiki team on game.team1 equals eteam.id, maybe. So that's how we're joining them together, because it says in which Fernando Santos was the Team 1 coach, right? So when we want to join on the Team 1 column, because that's going to give us the coach's name for all the Team 1s for all the games. And then finally we filter to be this actual value, where eteam dot coach equals this, right? So this is a little tricky. Does that kind of make sense how we're doing this? Like it's asking you to say find everything where Fernando Santos is Team 1 coach, but you're not saying like team1.coach equals Fernando Santos. You have to join it first on Team 1 and then look at team coach. Like they're sort of, one is in one table and Team 1, that link is in the other table. So you need to join them on that link, and then you can look in the other table that you've joined together to find the coach. And to filter, and not only to select the coach, but to filter on the coach. So yeah, hopefully that does make sense. Unknown column game.date. Game.mdate. What does that mean? Match date? One of these I'm going to get on the first try, eteam.name. I think this is team name. Hooray. Okay. Next, list the player for every goal scored in a game where the stadium was this string. Okay. So we could do select star from game where stadium equals this. And this is sometimes a good thing to do when you're confused about where to start and they're just like, oh, I have to go look at the tables and everything. Like you can immediately start building it up by just doing some exploratory queries. And obviously it's the wrong answer, but this will just let you actually say, okay, what does the data look like where this is, this thing matches what there's talking about. So stadium is this, and here's 5 different IDs. Now what we need to do is the player for every goal scored in one of these games, right? So we're going to start needing the goals. We're going to need the goal data where the game matches one of these, right? So let's add our join in. And I will separate this out. We'll keep this last line and we'll add game.stadium just so we know which table we're in. And instead of select star from game first, let's say goal join, inner join game. We can just do join. But man, they don't even get into like left joins or anything, do they? Not at all. Wow. Okay. Well, that's a whole other discipline. You get the idea of left join though. We use that to list the like all of the people who had no messages. Remember, we use that to list those people with the number 0, which would not have worked if we were interjoining, because there'd be nothing to match together, and it would have said, well, you get no row. In this case, we were able to get just the people row and empty message rows to go with it, you know? Okay. But yeah, again.
So one of them requires data, but then it's not.
Right. Well, inner join requires data in both columns where the match is true, where where it says on this, it must find data in both tables where that's true. If you do a left join, it'll only return the data from the first of the tables, and it will return data that matches if there's data in the second table, but it will just return blank columns otherwise. And the right join is the reverse. It will always return data from the second table, but so they're basically the same. It's just the order flips, for one or the other. And then outer join is like it will return data from both any data from both tables plus the matches from the other two.
So how many joins?
Cross join, and that's pretty much it, I think. Yeah. Cross join is super weird. Cross join is like take every possible combination of the two tables, rows going together, and then return all of those. Yeah. So, okay. Okay, so we have where game.stadium equals that. That's how we're going to filter. Still works. But see, look, we still have select star, and we joined, so we get all the columns from both tables. So it's quite a lot of columns. Instead of star, we can do goal.player. Right? That's what they want. Okay. List the player for every goal scored in a game where the stadium was this. What exactly are they looking for? Show what the answer should be. Player. Okay, so they're saying they want the same data. We have the right data. Look, run this, but they only want one of each person. So this is why we would do selecting. This is the easiest way to say. Only, when you're getting the end result of this data, only give me rows that are different from another row. So it will, because we're only selecting one column, it will return one row per player. Too many rows, we still got it wrong. The player for every goal scored in the game where the stadium was National Stadium Warsaw. So they only want this many. Oh. So we joined game, but we didn't join on anything.
I was remembering
so
why
like so it was like every row in game was a match to the row and goal. Okay. That's not right. On goal.match ID equals. And these can be in either order. It doesn't matter. Wrong answer, too few rows. Okay, so look at this. I was wrong. They do not want distinct. There are two of this person, and it just happens that we had way too much data. So let's get rid of the distinct. And we're correct. Hooray. Okay, more difficult questions. So you got through two of these more difficult ones, eh?
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Okay, I guess some of these are like, I guess, tricky ones where you have to be creative a little bit.
Forward rate is distinct.
Okay. Do you want to do number 8? Do you want to,
I mean, sure.
or okay, or do you want to? I mean, do you know how you go about doing this, or did it take a while and you have an answer?
Well, the thing that I messed up was I had to look up where I had to look up the syntax for that because I kept trying to put these in the wrong place.
Okay.
So I looked at that, and then you need parentheses for this one.
Okay.
And I tried to make the where into one big long statement, and I didn't understand why it wasn't working.
Okay.
So I had to explain that I needed to
Group the by
group the
parentheses.
first one. Yeah.
Okay. So when it says this shows all goals scored in the Germany-Greece quarterfinal, instead show the name of all players who scored a goal against Germany. So that means scoring a goal against Germany means the team in the goal table would be Greece, right? So it's like that's one tricky part. So we need to do game join goal on goal.match ID. Game.id. You say goal.player, goal.gtime. Make sure this works. Game dot, and I'm just adding these because. Okay. So this is all goals in the whole quarterfinal, and we only want the name and the ones that are against Germany. So game.team1 equals this, and game.team2 equals this, and right goal.team ID equals Greece. Okay, we have 2 players, and get rid of this one. Too few rows. So is this all players who scored a goal against Germany in any game?
Well, just once the Germany-Greece quarterfinal. If you click on the hint, it gives you a little extra points in it, like you're going to need to use the team it's not even Germany, and that's where distinct
All
is
players who scored a goal against Germany in any match.
You want to select
got
those
it.
scored by
Okay.
non-German players in matches where you are
Okay.
either team 1 or team 2.
Okay, so these are players who scored against Germany in the Germany-Greece quarterfinal. We want players who scored against Germany in any game, right?
No, just the Germany-Greece. The correct answer is
But that's really. Okay. I don't know. Like, let's test that because I think it might be more than one game is in the answer. But okay. So so we need to select goals scored only by non-German players in matches where Germany was the idea of either team 1 or team 2. Okay. So game.team1 is Germany or game.team2 is Germany. And goal.teamid is not Germany. So you can do not equal like that. So this would be any team other than Germany. But when Germany is one of the teams and this goal is not the Germany, then that definitely means they scored against Germany. Okay. So too many rows.
that was the thing with the parentheses. I had to
Got
wrap
it.
or statement in parentheses.
Got it. So these go together. One of these must be true. And then this one is the and. So both of these and, or no, either one of these and definitely this. Got it. Okay, and then we need the distinct. Okay, so that's the answer, but let's check real quick here. Goal.player, game.team1, game.team2. Yeah, these are not all Greece. So, yeah, Okay, but anyway, that's cool. It's a tricky one. Okay, how's this? Is this still helping doing all these? Okay, we have how many left? A couple left. Okay, this is the last one you did.
Yes.
Okay, team name and the total number of goals scored. Okay, so this is pretty easy. So select team, right, dot team name. We want to select the count of goal dot ID, I guess, or goal dot. So goal doesn't have an ID. What do you count?
I just have an asterisk there.
Okay, stars. Yeah, that makes sense. I wonder if you can do goal dot ID, comma goal dot G time. No, because those are unique, that may work just as well. And then, so we're going to do from team join goal on goal team dot ID equals goal dot team. Okay. Uh-oh, error in syntax. So it does not like count of two things. So the star is probably how you do it. Count. That's just saying count all the rows. Don't worry about counting one of the columns because they don't have an ID column. Okay, mixing of group columns with no group columns. Of course, that makes sense because we're not grouping by anything. And see how we're counting the total number of rows. So that's one, that one's all set. We're aggregating something, but we're not aggregating this one in any way at all. So we need to group by team name. And then I guess order by team name too, why not? That's it. Okay, show the stadium and the number of goals scored in each stadium. So stadium is on which table? Stadium is on the game table. So really this is very similar. We're doing the same thing because see this has foreign keys going to both of these. And instead of grouping and ordering by team name and counting that, we're gonna group and order and count by stadium, I think. So it should be very similar. And let's copy this whole thing and see if this works. We do game dot stadium count star from game inner join goal on game dot ID equals goal dot match ID group by game dot stadium order by game dot stadium. And it works. Oh no, you're right. Power here. Help. That streaming really takes your battery down. Okay. So that was answer 10. Oh, and this, if I'm being consistent, this one should be E team. It works either way. Okay. For every match involving Poland, show the match ID, date, and the number of goals scored. Okay. That's fun. We're going to, so this is definitely going to be team 1 equals Poland or team 2 equals Poland. That makes sense. So we've game join goal on goal.match ID equals game ID. Sorry, I'm gonna have to go through and do all these. Game.end date one goal team ID. Okay. Okay, so instead of just selecting all of this stuff, we need to, we basically need to add up all of the goal. We need to add up the number of goals that there were. So if we do instead of goal.teamID here, let's do count of goal of star. And we want to be grouping by everything except the goals, right? We want to group by match ID and date, because it says for every match, we want to show the ID and the date. So we definitely want. Yes, but we're not going to put those in the group by clause because we'll just count everything. And because we're joining together, we have a total number of rows, one per goal. And it should be, because we're grouping by the other two, each count will be the number of goal rows that there are that match. Okay. So we want match ID, we want date, we don't need teams. And we want to do group by goal.match ID. No, yes, it doesn't matter. We can group by game.id or goal.match ID. They're the same value. So selecting and grouping, we're going to get the same results because we're already joining them together anyway. And we're only going to get results where they match. So it doesn't matter which one you select or group by. But we'll keep this like this. Game.mdate. And that should be it. Okay, for every match where Germany scored, show match ID, match date, and the number of goals scored by Germany. Okay, so we're going to be filtering the goal table where team ID is Germany for sure. And then we're going to join it with the game table. So we want to show match ID, so that's going to be either game.id or goal.matchID. We'll say game.mdate. Actually, I'm going to say I like it better to have game.id here because it just seems more appropriate. And then another count, because we're going to definitely be counting up rows in the goals table again per game, you know, according to which ones match the game ID and date, which will always match each other too. So we're going to group by both of those. And we're going to count again. And the difference here is, well, first of all, we need to get our join, which is going to be the same exact thing. But in this case, we want where goal.teamID equals Germany, because it's every match and every goal where Germany scored. So we're only filtering to goals that were scored by Germany, and we're going to group by ID, game.date. First try, hooray. So these are starting to get a little just confusing and mind bending. All right, last one. We're almost done. List every match with the goals scored by each team as shown. This will use case when, which has not been explained in any previous exercise.
That's cool, thanks.
All right. I was gonna be like, hey, do you want to try this one? But yeah. So they do have an example here, which is pretty good. Every match with the goals scored by each team as shown. Team 1 score 1, team 2 score 2. Okay. So if we submit this sample, we get, oh, okay. Okay, so see how this is what this is doing is we're joining the goals with the games, same thing. But what it's selecting is the game date, the game team 1, and then it's selecting 1 only when these are the same. So basically only when the goal was scored by team 1. Otherwise it's selecting 0, and then that's the end of the case. So case is just like this big sort of if statement, condition kind of thing. So it's if this is true, then it's going to select 1. So that it's not going to select the value of the column, it's going to select 1. Otherwise, it's going to select 0. And then it's going to name that whole thing as score 1. So they gave, it's at least it's all written out for us. Goal dot team ID equals game dot team 1. When that's true, it's going to be a 1. That's score 1. So we're going to need to actually select the same kind of thing for the other team, basically. So we need to copy these 2 rows and have game.team2. And case when the goals team ID equals game team 2, then we're going to select 1 in this column, and that's score 2. And we're joining same thing. Okay, so we're getting close here. We have the date, we have the teams, we have scores, but in this case, see how there's like 2 scores in this one. Or actually, here's a good example. There's 2 rows here, and they're both Russia scoring, but it's 1 and 1. And what they wanted to show is 2. So they wanted us to add up all of the scores that match where basically where everything else matches. So instead of just doing the case here, so here, I'm not sure actually whether there's a way to do this all together, but the way I'm thinking we do this one gets very fun, is we are going to select from this. We already have this whole thing. We're going to select again from this, which is this data over here. We've created this sort of like an intermediate non-permanent table. By doing this full select, we've created data in this shape, right? So we have sort of like, it's almost like a table, and we can actually select from that just like we select from any other table. And it doesn't ever exist. It's not permanently stored or anything, but you can manipulate it in exactly the same way that you would a table. And you do that by basically saying, we're going to select star from, and then a parentheses, and then this whole thing. And then close the parentheses. So now obviously, if we say select everything from this, it's not going to be any different than just this in the first place, because it's like saying select star from a table. You'll just get everything back. But we can do that. Every derived table must have its own alias. So it's saying this is a derived table, and it's telling us you have to name it something. So we'll say, binary scores table thing. it doesn't matter what you call it, but it's telling you you need to name it something. Okay. Okay. So, so that makes sense, right? We're selecting everything from this inner selecting, which is fine, and it doesn't change anything about it. But now we can change, instead of just selecting everything, we can say select the columns we need, which is sort by mdate, match ID team 1 and team 2, and we select these. So, so we do binary score table thing dot mdate, and we'll have we'll have several lines here, and I'll start breaking this out. So you start needing to like get fun with the indents. This is a nice way to indent. You know, it's a little, so you line them up like this after the select. So this is each column. Okay, so that's probably how I would format it. And we'll do the same thing here. Binary score table thing, mdate. Binary score table thing, team 1, and so on. Copy this several times. Oops. Score 1, team 2, score 2. These are our 5 columns that they want. But, so after all of this, we want to say group by, and then there's going to be a whole lot of grouping. So binary score table thing dot, what are we grouping by? We're grouping by everything except the score. Actually, wait a minute. Oh yeah. Okay, so I missed one thing. These ones, we're not going to group by either one of these, okay? But because they're binary, what we are going to do, or we're not going to put them in the clause to be grouped together by SQL. We're going to aggregate them ourselves by saying sum. So this is very similar than counting rows, except instead of just counting every row, it's actually going to add the values in those rows. So we'll sum both of these. And then we group by everything else. So we need to group by mdate, team 1, and team 2. And this will get us very close, but they also want us to order it by. Uh-oh. That's fun. Oh, we have an extra comma there, so we can't end it. Okay, so this is getting pretty good. We have our date, we have our sum here, and we have our sum here. Okay, we might want to name these though nicer. So we'll still call this score 1, and we'll still call this score 2. This is how it's the same as when we do the select and we put the name after it. It's the same idea. We put the name we want this column to take rather than sum of blah, blah, blah. We put it at the end. So here's our data. We're starting to match. This is pretty good. 1, 1, 1, 1, 3. Now, why does it say too few rows?
You have to take match group by groups.
Yeah. Manage state, team 1, score 1, team 2, score 2. So it says, no, we have the right number of columns, it's saying, but we have too few rows. Well, let's try ordering first, just by what they want. So sort by mdate. match ID, team 1 and team 2. Yeah, okay, whatever. So match ID, what is that? What, like, mdate match ID? We don't have that in our data. Like, we need to select, you know, game.id or goal.match ID. And then we would need to okay, actually, let's call this match ID, even though it's a terrible name. Yeah, so it doesn't seem to like it. Maybe we see what should the answer be. Why do we have too few rows? Are there matches maybe where there was 0, 0? Maybe we're missing matches. Boy. Ooh, that's a tough one. How do we get the 0, 0s? Because the problem is we're inner joining. Ah, this is why we're inner joining. So what if we do just regular join? That's not going to fix it. That's still an inner join. But, okay, here we go. We're going to do goal from game join goal. Let's try doing left join goal, because that is going to select from every game and only goals where it matches.
There it is.
It works.
Nice.
And for some, that's kind of, I'm kind of amazed we got our 0, 0s just by doing left join. Yeah, and they say nothing about, you're going to, by the way, every other join here is not a left join. Maybe there's a way to do it that's not like this. But wow, that's a pretty monster last question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's a long one.
Yeah.
Maybe there is a simpler way to do this. I'm not actually sure. I'll have to think about it. If I can find one, I'll mention it. But that might be the actual what you have to do. Okay. Well, that was fun. Yeah. Okay. So, like this is, you know, we can sort of decompress from this and probably not really ever worry about anything that's ridiculous. I do write some queries that are sort of get, this long or whatever, and it just takes a long time, and you have to keep at it and understand, what you're doing. We'll do a lot of lookup of the documentation, but again, it's not something that I did for like many years until I was, working for many years, where I would start actually using something like this. You only use something like this when you really need. These days, I would say you only use something like that when you really need something that you're going to use a lot, that has to be fast, that has to be efficient, and your data is not really in the shape that you need. So you have to like transform it and do all this kind of trickery with the SQL in order to format it. In a lot of cases, if you were going to build data like this and you had a web app and you wanted you to return it, the obvious way and the way that most people would end up doing it for indefinitely, would be not to write a big query like that. It would be to use the tools that we took a little peek at, but we're going to get into next week. And it would use the tools to load that data into JavaScript and then be like, pour data in here, add up all the data. And it would, most people are much more familiar with going about it that way. It becomes a lot easier to like keep track of the steps when you do it in the imperative style. So it's slower, it might be slower. Like you might end up having to fetch more data and then just count that data in JavaScript. So there is that, there's always that kind of consideration where at some point it might make sense to have a database expert like do this kind of thing. But yeah, I think in most of your experience, you'll see the approach of being, load the data into JavaScript, process the data in JavaScript, and use those conventions much more often. Or Python or whatever the language is that the servers use. Have you learned Python?
A little bit.
Okay.
I just like it's not like it's easy to follow.
It's a pretty good learning language. I mean, we had talked about, with all the instructors, we talked about the question of like, should we have Python as part of the program? And I mean, the conclusion was sort of like, we have to learn JavaScript for front end, and it would be one more big thing to be like, here's, not really, not on the web, not really. I mean, you can.
We could start a Python meetup now.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I use both. I use JavaScript and Python at work, so it's pretty common to have both of those. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's good to see you. See you tomorrow. Did you have any other questions?
The sour, like with the last week with so I'm watching this videos.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make sense of like most of the code. Yesterday I was just reading code.
Okay.
And today I feel like I'm in a comfortable place to just go ahead and like I can redo it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were thinking of going through the class videos.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I won't distract you or anything.
I will bother you when I have questions.
No, that's great. Please do. Please absolutely send me a message on this, or stop me in class, of course. I'm not sure, but let me see. Is there? I think we might just end the stream here after the. But if anybody's watching this later, I don't know if Karen didn't. She must be doing something in Maine. I don't know if there's anyone else around today. Everyone's doing restaurants or whatever. It's Father's Day, right? I'm all set. I already did. Homework is done. Okay, well, that's it for the official office hours. Ping me today. I'm talking to the internet. Ping me today if anything comes up. If you have any questions, we can hop right back on and do a session if anyone's around later. But have a great Sunday, and then see you tomorrow. So long. Yeah, see you. Stop. End meeting. So long.